Good afternoon to our listeners and welcome to Heart Talk Between Sisters. I am Alana Wheeler and I am the host for today's program. And with me this afternoon, I have Miss Krsty Alexander Garvanne. I hope I pronounced it correct. And
Yes.
Krsty is the founder and CEO and chief big heart of Apple Rose Beauty. And she's from the United States, Florida, but we are here streaming from the Caribbean region. We've just been through Hurricane Beryl, which devastated some of the smaller islands in the Eastern Caribbean, in Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Jamaica got a bit of a touch, and we understand so far it's been at Texas, and it's still on the move. But we are thankful to God for life, and we are thankful to God that not many lives were lost. During the devastation. One life lost is one too many, but we're thankful that a few lives have been lost. So with Krsty, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Krsty, and then I'm going to hand over to her for her to say some more about herself. But Krsty, welcome to Heart Talk Between Sisters.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
All right. So, Krsty, would you believe has Apple Rose Beauty, and she's going to tell us about Apple Rose Beauty. But Krsty started off her life as an in engineering and business and management. So, how did she transition from that into Apple Rose Beauty? Where her degree was in physics and maths. Then she did management science, industrial engineering, all these things. And here she is running a fantastic and a very successful nonprofit in the United States. So, Krsty, of course, the first question I'm going to ask you is really, who is Krsty Alexander Garvanne?
Yes, so that is a very interesting question. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I know Alana said that I am from the United States, but I'm actually from Trinidad and Tobago. So I like to make that. But I like to describe my identity in terms of love. I like to say, I love God, I love people, and I strive to be kind and generous and loving in all my roles. So I try not to identify myself through my roles because I know those change. But I love each and every one of my roles, and I try to show up in that way in them, in my roles as daughter, as sister, as wife, as friend, as aunt, and as business owner, of course. So I think, in a nutshell, that is how I would describe myself, and that's how I will identify myself.
Okay, and how could I forget that you're Trini to the bone? That's like most important. When Trini migrate and stuff, we kind of just forget, oh yeah, you actually were from here. Because Dr. Green, Clarence Green, with all the accent he has and everything, he's also Trini to the bone, lived in the US and came back to Trinidad. So it's good to connect with a member of the diaspora, as you would see. And I think that's how we met. We met through the diaspora, who has been contributing and making a lot of significant contribution professionally to our country, Trinidad and Tobago. So we are thankful to persons like you who have tried and sought to give back to our community. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the mentorship work that you've been doing with all of the young persons in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, yes, definitely. Home is home, and it will always be dear to my heart. And I've always had a heart for the young people in Trinidad, so it's definitely right up my alley to give back.
Yes, thank you again. So, Krsty, we're going to get into a hot talk between sisters conversation. And, as I would have shared with you before when we met, this is really a heart to heart talk, women talking about all sorts of issues that affect us. But, I asked you to come on the program because I just found that you were just doing such amazing work in so many different areas. And, that transition that you made from being a professional engineer in the private sector, in the business community, and transitioning into nonprofit, I found it to be so interesting and so inspirational for other young women who may be thinking of, just today I was at a function today and I met a young lady who is into financial management and she has a master's, a MBA. and she said she would love to work for a nonprofit, but she has all these mortgage to pay and bills to pay. And we know, nonprofits, when you start off, it doesn't pay all that well. So, but where she is now, she has a very good job, private sector, paying well, and is able to pay her mortgage and, handle all her finances and everything. So, but her heart's desire is to be in a nonprofit. So, there are a lot of women out there who really want to just be in that environment where you really feel that sense of fulfillment and that sense of achieving purpose and fulfilling purpose. And so I just wanted you to talk to us about why did you leave the whole engineering career behind, all of that behind you left, and you launched into working in the nonprofit sector, which we know oftentimes isn't as financially rewarding as having a job in the private sector, for example.
Yes, so I do want to clarify that my business is actually not nonprofit. It is a for-profit business with a large giving model. So I always kind of share that with people because people think it's a lot of times people think it's either or, either you're working in the corporate, the business sector, and you're chasing the almighty dollar or for whatever reason you're not fulfilled there, or you're working in nonprofit. But there is an in between, and my business actually straddles both. So there are a lot of businesses like that that are social entrepreneurships. There are businesses that have a big social mission behind them. And that's what our business is. So we are a for profit business, but we have a big social mission, and we do partner a lot with NGOs and nonprofit organizations to do our work. But I did want to clarify that we are a for profit company. And what led me to that was pretty much kind of what you just described. I worked in corporate America for over a decade after I graduated with my master's degree in engineering, and I was actually on the fast track, being promoted every couple of years. I really, really liked the company I worked for. I liked the values that they had, but I did at one point or at some point in that journey feel like something was missing. And I felt like there was more. I had a passion for more. I always had a heart for entrepreneurship since I was a young girl, since I was a teen. I desired to start my own business. And it just felt like it was the right time. I was actually up for another promotion at the time. And the company had already, scheduled the meeting. I knew they were going to make the announcement. But it just did not feel like the right move for me. I really felt like there was something else that I needed to do. I wasn't quite sure at the time what that something else was, and so I know we'll probably get to this, but I actually, between leaving my corporate career and starting my own company, I actually went on a world travel for about 11 months, almost a year. I traveled the world doing good work, working with NGOs and doing social missions in 11 countries in those 11 months. So I spent a month in each of those countries, and that kind of helped clarify for me what my next move would be. And that was the catalyst for starting my company.
Okay, well, wow, thank you so much for clarifying that. Yes, social entrepreneurship is something that we're hearing about a lot. The conversation I had last week with Dr. Marlene Carson, she spoke heavily about that social entrepreneurship and how it can be profitable, and it can become profitable. So yeah, you kind of jumped into some of the things that I wanted to talk about later on. But as you mentioned it, let's get into it one time, because in my mind, I'm thinking you left behind a high promotion, high paying job to go to travel for 11 months, and somebody on the outside might say, you went to travel for 11 months to find yourself, you know? I was like, so how did you pay your bills all that time? How did you finance that trip for 11 months? How did you make that transition from, enjoying certain things, a certain quality of life, working in private sector and corporate world, to no salary for that 11-month period plus, you know What was that like?
Yes, so I'm also very adventurous. So that was a big part of it. I loved traveling. So before I actually went on this 11-month trip, I kind of sat down and kind of thought about the things that I really love and the things that I really enjoy. And one of those things was traveling, and not just traveling, as a tourist and visiting countries, but I loved being immersed in different cultures and feeling like I was actually a part of that culture. So I wanted to do something where it wasn't just a couple weeks here or there, it wasn't just a cruise, it wasn't just visiting a company for a country for a few days, but it was actually where I could work alongside people in the country, really help with whatever they were doing that was good work in the country. And so, yeah, I actually saved up. So I used my own funds for a lot of it. I also raised funds. So, I shared with people what I was looking to do and the impact that I expected it to have. And so I raised funds as well. But I was by no means living, the life. What we were actually living on less than $5 a day in these countries. So we were living and working alongside NGOs that were actually helping and doing good work in the country. So in each country we went to, we partnered with different organizations in that country and worked alongside them, lived with the locals, all of that. I also wasn't married at the time and had no kids, so I didn't have those those strings attached to keeping me put in the U.S. And so I also figured, if I did want to do this, would probably be the best time, because I knew there probably wouldn't be a time that was as convenient. I also knew that the corporate life would be there. I had a house at the time. I did sell my house. I gave away most of my belongings. What couldn't fit in a little 5 by 5 storage room. I pretty much gave away, and so it was pretty light travels. Traveled with a backpack the entire time, so it wasn't a lot of luggage, and so it was light travels, easy movement, and it definitely was an adventure, and I really enjoyed it. It really gave me a different perspective of life and the world. And I wouldn't say I went to find myself, but I really think I went to really experience life in a different way, and that brought clarity to my purpose.
Wow, well, that sounds like, that sounds like missionary work to me, you know? It
Yes,
sounds
yes.
like missionary. That's like, yeah, it's 'cause selling your stuff, giving up everything, giving up a lifestyle to go to somewhere else and to support the work that's being done in other countries. But what influenced your choice of countries? And as a woman, did you feel safe going to do that? Is it that these are organizations that you were connected with before, or you were referred to these organizations? I mean, how did you choose the organizations and the countries, and how did you feel in terms of your safety, your personal safety?
Yeah, so I actually, when I decided that I wanted to travel, I thought, what would be cool is if I could travel to 12 countries in 12 months. So that's literally what I Googled. And I found this organization for young adults called the World Race, and that is what they did. They helped young adults travel, but theirs was 11 countries in 11 months, and you traveled as a team. So I did feel safe. I wasn't alone. They also did a lot of, sensitivity training, a lot of cultural sensitivity training before. So we learned a lot about the countries. You got a chance to actually pick your route. So there were certain countries that I always wanted to go to, that I wanted to make sure that were part of this trip. So Thailand was one of them. South Africa was another one because Nelson Mandela is like my hero. So I really wanted to visit South Africa. I did also want to visit Central America because I hadn't been there before. So those were kind of some of the things that helped me determine which route I went on.
So we're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be right back on Hot Talk Between Sisters.
I'm going to come right back and ask you this question, O'Connell, and then I want you to answer the same question from a legal perspective. The question is, you said that 3 months after you broke up,
6 weeks.
6 weeks after you broke up, you found out.
Only after a court-ordered deposition 2 years or several years later did I get all of the facts.
Okay, let's deal with it without the facts.
Okay.
What made you feel at the time when you were aware that a child was in the making, that you were the father?
Okay, that's a good question. And I had dated the mother previously for 2.5 years. I had allowed her and her brother to live with me when their mother put them out. And this was a person I trusted with my life. So when she said, I'm pregnant and the baby is yours, and I'm unaware of her having a relationship with anybody else besides me, because she was the only person I was involved with. And based on the date that she told me, that was at the time that we were still dating as a couple.
So
it never dawned on me that she gave me the wrong date.
So you believe this woman, and you believe that you were the father of the child, the biological father of the child, when she said you were the father.
Yes.
What makes a father legally to a child?
Order this amazing downloadable audio today. Contact 1-868-397-5961 or 1-678-856-3709.
Thank you for joining us on Hot Talk Between Sisters. And we're here having a conversation this Friday afternoon with Krsty Alexander, who is a Trini American, and she is talking with us about her work, the work that she's doing in social entrepreneurship. And we were just talking about her 11-month, 11-country mission to Central America, Asia, and to South Africa. And she actually did have the opportunity to work with survivors of human trafficking in Asia. So, Krsty, let's talk some more about your experiences on that 11-month, 11-country journey and experience.
Yes, so we actually started off in Central America. We did 5 countries in Central America. Let me see if I can remember them. It was Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, um, Costa Rica. So 4 countries in Central America, and then we went to Southeast Asia, and we did Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Laos, um, and then we went to Africa, yeah, and then did Swaziland and South Africa. And I missed a country in Asia. I'll have to remember what country that was. It's been a while. So in each country, volunteered with different organizations, like I mentioned, that were doing good work. But the catalyst for my company, actually, one of the catalysts was in Asia, in Thailand, which was the 5th country in that journey. I volunteered with an organization that helped rescue women from human trafficking, and they employed the women and they also housed them. So I actually lived with the women. I lived there, worked alongside them. They taught me Thai, I taught them English. And that's when human trafficking became real to me. I had heard about it before, and this was back when a lot wasn't very public about human trafficking. You would hear about it now and then. Now it's a lot more known and people know a lot more about it. But this was 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago at the time. So, yeah, actually, it was 10 years ago when I went to Thailand and went on this trip. And so, human trafficking became real to me. It wasn't something that was really distant. I realized that this could have been me had I faced different circumstances. I realized that some of the circumstances these women found themselves in, I could have found myself in. It was also around the time with the Bring Back Our Girls movement in Nigeria, where the terrorist group, the Boko Haram, had abducted some schoolgirls from their physics class, some high school girls. Like you mentioned in the beginning of this program, I actually did physics for my undergraduate degree, and the Boko Haram were actually threatening to sell those women into human trafficking. So it all just kind of came to a head for me, and I realized that this was something that happened all over the world. It happens closer to home than many of us sometimes realize or would like to admit. And I really felt a call to do something about it. And I realized that the gap that I saw with human trafficking. There are a lot of great NGOs that are helping to rescue the women, working with law enforcement and the legal field and all of that to help rescue women. But there was a gap in terms of them finding sustainable work once they came out of the sex trade and out of human trafficking. And so I felt like my company could fill that gap. And so that was the catalyst for starting Apple Rose Beauty. And the company is actually named after two victims of human trafficking I met. Their names were Apple and Rose. So that was the catalyst for starting that company. Throughout the trip, we had other experiences. We worked with for example, in Swaziland, I worked with in an orphanage with some young people in an orphanage, and taught them in the high school there. We did a lot of teaching during this trip, and also, worked with other organizations. One organization I worked with actually helped families that scoured the dump. This was in Nicaragua, scoured the dump for food and for sustenance, and so we worked alongside them to help provide meals and make sure the kids got a chance to go to school and all of that. So it was a really, really life changing experience, and it really gave me, of course, an appreciation for life and an appreciation for what I had. But it also reminded me that the human experience is so similar, regardless of where we are. Everyone kind of wants and desires the same things in life, and I felt like my company can kind of fill in the gap for survivors in that way.
Oh, that's very, very, very interesting. I don't think that many persons who set up social entrepreneurship businesses or who even get into the nonprofit business have the opportunity to do what you did, or have the means to do what you did. So that's really, I just find that's just, I find that's a lot. And you mentioned also that you were married. I mean, this question may be a bit personal. You don't have to answer it in any way. But my thoughts are, your husband has to be a real trooper and a hero, to
Well,
allow
no,
his wife.
yeah, I wasn't married at the time. That's what I was saying. At the
Ah,
time, I was not married, so I figured if it was any time to do it, that would be it. I
yes,
am
because I
married
was
now.
wondering, I was wondering, what husband would let his wife go for 11 months? But
Yes,
yeah, that yeah, when you're single, that's the time to do those things. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting with the name you said came from the two survivors that you felt, they were close, they touched you in some way, that you would name it after them. But I wanted to go back a little bit into that, you know, that whole 11-month journey and experience. Um so you would have had to pay for you paid your way, as in your own tickets, and you had to basically sustain yourself. And it's just that the organization would have facilitated accommodation and transportation and stuff, but you basically had to finance yourself along for
yes,
that period.
yes.
Okay. All right. And I mean, if you could recall, you said it was 9 years ago, but can you recall like some of what sort of emotions or thoughts were going through your head as you were seeing and witnessing all these things? Because the countries that you mentioned are countries that would not have been they're not first world countries, first world in inverted commas. They're not countries like the country that you would have lived in, the United States. And so you would have most likely witnessed a lot of poverty and a lot of persons who lack basic amenities. So, you know, what was that like for you to witness that and to experience that?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some really, really heartbreaking times. And I remember this image in the dump in Nicaragua that I mentioned, where we went, and there were babies there, just you know on piles of rubbish, just there in little carriers. Their parents would set them down and dig through the piles looking for anything they could eat or sell, to kind of help sustain their families. So there were really, really heartbreaking times in the Philippines as well. We worked with a group that helped feed the children in this area called Trash Mountain. And you can imagine it's called Trash Mountain because it's surrounded by these dumps. There's piles of trash. You kind of actually go up this mountain, and we fed some of the kids there. They A lot of the families literally lived in tents and makeshift, and not even like tents you would buy in like a sporting goods store. These are tents made with tarps, makeshift tents. So yeah, there were a lot of moments where it was really difficult to see, but at the same time, the resilience and the joy that people had, even when they lived in these types of conditions, was really, really impactful and heartwarming. To see that the human, like I mentioned, the human experience is so common, and they can still find joy and laughter in friendship and in community. And of course, they were happy when we were there and brought food and all of that. But for the most part, like I mentioned, we lived on less than $5 a day as well. So we by no means were living extravagantly. It wasn't like one of those trips where you lived somewhere else and then they transported you to those areas. Pretty much in every case, we lived there, slept on dirt floors, at times, with of course with our sleeping mats, but we slept on dirt floors. And so just seeing the dichotomy of all of it, there were these conditions. Yes, it was really heartbreaking, and you definitely saw the great need that existed. But what really impacted me and stayed with me was really seeing the smiles on their faces, seeing when the kids wanted to teach you a game that they knew, or they were interested in. I was a black woman traveling to some of these countries that hadn't seen um, black people. Like I remember in the Philippines, they came and were touching my hair, and they were, like, "What is this? Your hair is different." And then, I also got a chance to work with some of the ITES people in the Philippines, which are the native people of the Philippines that have darker skin and all of that. So it was a myriad of experiences that impacted me in a lot of different ways, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. We were definitely heartbroken to leave the different countries because we developed these rich relationships as we worked alongside the different organizations and worked with the people. So it was like I said, it was definitely a life changing experience, and really kind of gave me an appreciation for the fact that we are all the same and we all kind of want the same things. And some of us are more fortunate than others. And if we can help and if we can serve, it would behoove us to do that, because at any point it could be us on the other end of the spectrum.
Correct, correct. You know, I'm just thinking, like, did you maintain contact with, are you still in touch with any of those like groups or organizations or individuals in particular? Like when you set up your social entrepreneurship and you named it after the two survivors, I mean, do they know that you named something after them?
Yeah, so those victims of human trafficking, I named it after. They don't know particularly, but the organization does, that I served, the organization that I where I lived with the women and served with them. They're aware of it. The good thing about when we went, social media was really big, and what was interesting, everyone had a Facebook profile, regardless of where they were. It was really, really funny, to be sometimes in certain areas and see cell phones being pulled out, and I think that it's one of those things. I know a few years ago where there were some uprisings in the Middle East and all of that, and they kind of organized through social media. So social media is still very big. So I'm connected with many of the groups and many of the people that I met and encountered. They're connected through social media, and we'll still comment on each other's posts and send a message here and there. My organization, my company also supports a couple of the organizations that I volunteered with during that trip, so we're definitely in close contact with them as well.
Yeah, and they must be so happy and proud to know that the work that you did with them had such a positive impact and that they could actually benefit from it now, years, because you're saying 9, 10 years later, that they're still able to benefit from that interaction and that experience. So that's a real blessing, and it's an encouragement for other persons to go and to have that experience. As you said, it's an important experience to have while we're single. I mean, unless husband and wife are going together or something, but I mean, to leave
Yes.
your spouse for 11 months, that's, yeah.
Yes, and I mean there were a couple, husband and wife, pairs on the race as well. But I do want to
Mm.
encourage, listeners, that it doesn't have to be as drastic or dramatic as that. I think, putting yourself in someone else's shoes is not a difficult thing, and I think many times we put barriers between that because we think that we need to do some grand gesture, or something that's really social media worthy or whatever that is. But I think just doing that in simple things every day, whether it's serving in a soup kitchen, whether it's seeing someone on the street, and if you feel safe, or you're with someone, approaching them, giving a care package, whatever that looks like, just being, sometimes just being, taking yourself out of your own world and being aware of the need around you can be a simple task.
I mean, it's as you said at the beginning, you said you love people, and that's what loving people is all about, and it's a for those who are Christian and stuff, it's a biblical principle of love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love others. You love your neighbor as yourself, so it's really, if
Yes,
we love people and we love others, then the love that we have will be extended to want to help somebody who is in need, and that person could be right in our own family, in our own household, our siblings or cousins or relatives, extended family. It could be in our own neighborhoods, our neighbors. It could be a co-worker on the job or something, or somebody who we walking past in the streets, or driving past in the streets who needs help. But that loving of other people and wanting to reach them and to help them. But I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that, some of the things you witnessed was so um I don't even want to use the word traumatic, but seeing like children and seeing persons in some dire situations. Did the group have like any sort of like a counselor or any kind of interventions when you would have those experiences, or at the end of the 11 months? I don't know how you felt after the 11 months, but I'm just thinking of myself that I would have felt so exhausted, you know, um, So think about that. We're going to take a little break and we will be right back in a few minutes on Hot Talk Between Sisters.
Boost your business with WCAN Radio's ad creation. Our experts will help you reach your target population. Contact us today at 1-868-397-5961 and experience successful communication.
Boost your business with WCAN Radio's ad creation. Our experts will help you reach your target population. Contact us today at 1-868-397-5961 and experience successful communication.
Thank you for staying with us on my conversation with Krsty Alexander. And Krsty, we were sort of wrapping up that 11-month, 11-country tour experience that you had. I wouldn't even say it's a tour, it's an experience that you had. And I was asking you if after that 11-month period, based on what you shared, for me, if I were in your shoes, I would have felt mentally and emotionally exhausted, maybe even physically exhausted because of having to witness all these things. Was there any opportunity or did you have a chance to sort of like, I don't know if detox is the word or de-stress or some way to kind of relieve yourself of all this emotions that you would have gone through during that period of time?
Yes, yes, definitely. And throughout the experience as well, we would have different debrief sessions, we would call it, where we, got a chance to kind of, just share our hearts, express some of those emotions, talk with team members. We also had resources in the US with the organization, coaches, mentors that we could talk to if we were struggling with anything at the time. But in returning to the US, we also had, a big debrief at the end. And also, we had training on just reintroduction because you're coming back to, life as you knew it, but you're different. You've had all these experiences, and the just the rhythm of everything is different as well. I remember when I first came back to the US, just the sound of my cell phone ringing all the time or notifications. I had to turn off, put my phone on silent, and literally I have not turned that back on in 10 years, so my phone is always on silent. But that was something that I had to do when I came back because I realized just the bombardment of the all those notifications and just having that type of overloads and that type of stimulation all the time that you would get in in first world countries, whereas in a lot of those countries, you were there were times when we slept outside in hammocks, so you're under the stars and it's quiet. And, there were a couple times we stayed on farms and, so it was really a different experience and I definitely had to take some time to get readjusted to life in the US. I also was really conscious of not losing, some of the things that I developed and some of the things I learned, like that sensitivity to other people, that whole idea of living a life that's very mindful and really, thoughtful about, why you think different ways and, and how you approach how you view other human beings and all of that. I was really conscious about not wanting to lose some of that. Even the whole thing about no driving for that entire year, I didn't drive, and so coming back and dealing with traffic and um, road rage and all of that, I recognized for the first several months, I just had this kind of peace on the road, not irritated with other drivers, and so that eventually faded away. But it took some time, and also the physical toll. You're right, there is a physical toll as well. Just, from a health perspective, I had to, make sure I was, physically healthy. I had a little cold coming back as well, so I had to make sure that I dealt with that, and, little respiratory things from living in environments and places where, it might not have been as clean, and all of that, so it was definitely a process, but I did kind of give myself the time to do that, and just to get reacquainted with family members, and travel a bit, and see friends who I hadn't seen in a while, and all of that. I did give myself about 2 months or so when I came back to do some of that traveling before I kind of, started working on launching the business.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hearing all of that because I'm seeing all of the effects of that experience, And particularly when you mentioned that you would have worked with survivors of trafficking and spent some time with them. I mean, now we know about vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, and particularly living with survivors. That in itself, I mean, helping a survivor is one thing, but actually living with survivors for a period of time, that could really take a toll on you, on an individual, unawares, unawares,
Hmm.
because it really does take, when they're talking and they're sharing, and you're having to interact with them and everything. It's not that it's tiring dealing with survivors or frustrating, but it's just that because of the trauma that they have, that trauma is transferred to us unconsciously without us realizing it, you know. And it's like energy, people talk about it as energy, like it
Hmm.
takes energy from you really without you even realizing it, because they themselves are in need of, you know um all the things that you can give them: the attention, the affection, the listening voice, the special extra care, sensitivity, that sort of thing, they need that. They need that. So, yeah, so you said 2 months it took you basically to sort of readjust, and it's also a culture shock in a sense, because it would have been a culture shock when you went to the different countries, and then to come back and experience another culture shock, having to readjust to
Yes.
back to life as it was. And then the life as it was is not life going back into the corporate world or engineering world or anything. It's life now, not in full-time work, not in the corporate world, as you see the rat race of running down the mighty dollar, but it's now in a world of you deciding, okay, what next do I do with my life, and how do I go about what I want to do now? How do I go about, and how do I navigate that? So did you have like mentors or persons who were guiding you, counseling you, advising you when you were back in the US?
I did not. I mentioned that I always had a heart for entrepreneurship. And so um, the the company I started, Apple Rose Beauty, one of the catalysts was human trafficking. But the first catalyst for it really was my first love, which was chemistry. So, in Trinidad, when I was 15 years old in secondary school in Trinidad, in my chemistry class, we analyzed face powder. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to start a cosmetics company one day. And I actually wrote a life plan then at the time that I was going to work in engineering and business and management for some time to understand what a business is, how to run a business, and then I was going to start my company. Now, I wrote this life plan at 15 years old. Life happens as it does to every 15-year-old. And, so time went on. I had a very, kind of circuitous path, but it's really interesting that it came right back to that, but with such a richer mission. Because at the time when I was 15, I didn't know what human trafficking was. I wasn't exposed to that. And so, that dream kind of came back when I decided that I wanted to create this opportunity and these options for survivors, that dream of starting this company kind of came back. And so I didn't have, mentors, per se, but my brother is also an entrepreneur in a completely different field, but he was definitely able to kind of help me with some of the nuts and bolts of starting a company, registering and all of that, getting your tax information, all of that type of stuff. And then it was just a lot of doing my own research, reaching out to others. One of the things I used to say when I worked in corporate was that I didn't have all the answers, but I knew the right questions to ask. And so that I think was one of my superpowers that really allowed me to be able to launch without direct, mentorship. But throughout my, entrepreneurial journey, and particularly in the beginning, I always made an effort to be involved in entrepreneurial communities, because one of the first things I realized was that it could be very lonely. Coming from a corporate career, from having coworkers and all of that, starting your own business can be really lonely, and it's easy to feel very isolated and siloed. So I really made a concerted effort to get involved with different organizations, whether they were women's organizations or the chambers of commerce where I live, all of that, and those really kind of helped, to create that community as well, and also kind of share best practices with other entrepreneurs, that type of thing.
Yeah, I could identify with when you're starting your own business and it could be lonely. I totally identify with that. Yeah. And I think it's so important to have mentors and have persons. And yeah, joining organizations and for that support and also for ideas, because as you rightfully said, sometimes you think you're the only person going through that experience, but there are other entrepreneurs that have walked that path.
Yes,
And just simply talking to them, that would help you to prevent you from having to go through things unnecessarily, or even if you're going through them, understanding that that's part of the process.
right. Yes.
um so yeah, so you want to tell us some more about your company, Apple,
Apple
Beauty,
Rose.
Apple Rose. Yes, Apple Rose. Tell
Yes.
us some more about it. What do you do? What does it involve? What kind of products? How do persons get your products? That sort of thing. Tell us some more.
Yeah, well, it's a luxury organic skincare company. So we have products like facial cleansers, serums, moisturizers, night creams, all of that, and it's made with certified organic ingredients. A lot of it is ingredients that Trini's might be familiar with, like turmeric and aloe and coconuts and hibiscus and all of that. I definitely try to incorporate some of those things that I saw my dad, plant growing up. He was, both my parents were really big on natural remedies for everything, which is very common in the Caribbean and in Trinidad. And my dad had an organic garden. It's still his passion. Now that he's retired, he still works that garden every day. And so I definitely wanted to include those types of ingredients in there. They are definitely very high quality products. So they're not necessarily the type of products that you would find in like an outdoor market type, some of the shea butter type products, but they're more department store type products and quality. And they're really, really effective for things like acne or for dry skin or for different signs of aging, all of that. You can find our products on the website would be the best place. We do have some on Amazon as well, but the website is applerosebeauty.com, and that's APPLEROSE beauty.com.
Okay, that sounds interesting. But you mentioned luxury. That means that's probably above my price range. But why luxury?
When I looked at the market when when I decided to start the company, and I knew I wanted to do natural and organic because that's just the way I live as well. And so I wanted, and that was really important to me to have products that were good for you, that didn't have all these harsh chemicals and toxins and all of that. And I do have an appreciation for the way nature can really impact our skin just in in its purest form even. And in looking at the market and seeing what was available out there, I felt like there was a gap in the market in terms of an elevated experience for organic products. I was used to like going to the little markets and seeing the like I mentioned the whipped shea butters and all of that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that I had seen a lot of that, and I felt, that I could add value in another way and create products that really brought kind of an elevated experience to skincare and to taking care of yourself. That I would appreciate, and I think others could appreciate as well. And I say luxury, the price point is not as luxury as you might think. So definitely check it out. There are definitely many products on the market that are way more expensive than ours, but I definitely like to say luxury in terms of the experience you can expect and the feeling that you get when you use the products. The products also have minimal scents. I am sensitive to strong scents and strong fragrances. So I wanted to also, and I'm also sensitive. I also have sensitive skin in general to different products. So I wanted to also develop products that were good for sensitive skin, weren't strongly fragranced, but just really light and felt good and luxurious on the skin.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to check it out and check it out on Amazon also, and see what it's like. Yeah, I mean, what woman doesn't want to see about her skin, right?
Yes, hopefully.
I don't know about Dr. Green, but I think there are men too who actually, they do manicures and pedicures and, they very much into their skin conscious and buying certain products and all of that. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
but the products are also for men, right? Not men and
Yes, yes.
women.
Like I said, they're not
Okay.
heavily fragrant, so you won't get very like floral fragrances or anything that
Yes.
most associate with women. So yeah, definitely, my husband uses all the products and
Okay.
I
And
introduced
then
him
I'm
to
sure
them.
you'll have like gift packages and things, little, for that Father's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, that kind of thing.
Yes, yes. And we do have gift boxes that we do during the holiday time, during Valentine's and all of that. So
Okay.
yes.
All right. Well, that sounds good. So, Christy, on that note, would you believe that our hour has passed already?
Wow,
My,
that
how
was
time
fast.
goes quickly. Yeah, it just goes very quickly. So I really would just like to thank you so much. I know Dr. Green is gonna close it off on the air. But on my end, I would just want to say thank you very much. I know we've been trying to do this interview for some time, and so I'm really appreciative of you being able to lock down this Friday afternoon to be able to have this interview and for us to be able to share it with our networks. So I just wanted to encourage you, once we have the recording is going to go on the YouTube page, Bijou Caribbean page, so that your colleagues, if they're not able to listen into it live today, that they can tune in on the YouTube channel and listen to it afterwards. All right, we're going to share that link with you once Dr. Green has cleared that link. So, Krsty, I wish you every good success in your business. I thank you so much for sharing your life with us and with our listeners. And we do hope that at some point in time, you'll be able to come back on our program and really share with us some more about the good work that you're doing and also some of the success stories of some of the survivors who you've been helping, hearing about them starting their own businesses themselves, and you see that multiplication effect taking place, where you're able to help them set up their own business and they in turn have successful businesses. So really look forward to hearing those success stories. And is there any last thing that you would like to say to our listeners or share with our listeners?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was definitely a pleasure, kind of, going back and thinking back to some of those experiences. The only thing I guess I would like to leave is that whole idea of love that we talked about earlier. And, I think if each one helps one, like we say, I think the world would be a lot better place. So I do want to encourage the listeners to do what you can with what you have where you are. Don't ever think you're too insignificant or too small. To keep dreaming as well. And yeah, let's help each other.
Okay, thank you, Krsty Alexander. And you've been listening to Heart Talk Between Sisters on WCAN Radio. Have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.
Heart Talk Between Sisters radio broadcast. Tune in to a heartwarming and enlightening radio experience like no other. Join us on a journey of love, laughter, and lifelong connections as we explore the unique bond between sisters. Our broadcast is a celebration of sisterhood, offering a safe space for candid conversations, shared memories, and inspiring stories that touch the soul. Whether you're a sister yourself or simply appreciate the beauty of this extraordinary relationship, this broadcast is for you. Discover the secrets of sisterly love, support, and understanding as we delve into personal experiences and heart-to-heart conversations that will make you smile, cry, and reflect. So, grab your favorite cup of tea, get cozy, and let our Heart Talk Between Sisters broadcast warm your heart and lift your spirits. Join us every week for an emotional journey filled with wisdom, connection, and the enduring power of sisterly bonds. Don't miss out on this extraordinary experience.
To listen to our station WCAN Radio for this and other informative programs all day long, visit www.wcanradio.us. To be a special guest in any of our segments or to support us financially through sponsorship, call 1-868-397-5961 or 1-678-856-3709.